The EDUCAS WJEC specification asks us to consider the application of situation ethics to the issue of polyamorous relationships. With any question that asks you to apply, you are being asked to demonstrate AO1 skills. This means that you are being asked to show your knowledge and understanding of how situation ethics could go about making an ethical decision concerning polyamorous relationships. This means you need to be able to demonstrate your knowledge of the issues that are important in making this decision, and you need to show that you understand the principles of situation ethics and how to put them into practice in real life. One of the first things to remember about situation ethics is that the boss principle of agape is to be applied to the individual person in each situation, not to abstract concepts or ideas. Therefore, situation ethics cannot make a general pronouncement about the goodness or badness of polyamorous relationships in theory, whereas a theory like natural law can. Situation ethics does not apply any absolutes to the issue of polyamorous relationships because it is all relative to love. Therefore, the question is not, are polyamorous relationships morally acceptable? The question is this polyamorous relationship going to promote agape? In the interest of clarity, a polyamorous relationship is not the same as cheating, nor is it the same as bigamy. A polyamorous relationship is a romantic and/or sexual relationship between more than two people that all the parties are aware of and are fully consensual in. Polyamorous relationships tend to emphasize the importance of consent, openness, honesty, and trust, so that all the members of the relationship will flourish as part of it rather than be hurt. Legalistic approaches to relationships beyond that of a husband and wife are clear. The divine command approach generally views sexual relationships as being created by God for the purpose of reproduction. They are commanded by God as permanent, binding, and unbreakable. They are for one man and one woman, and adultery or extramarital relationships are prohibited. This means that any sexual encounter that is had outside of the relationship between that married couple after marriage is considered adulterous. In addition, premarital sex is also taught to be against God's command. Fletcher writes that the triple fear of conception, detection, and infection have forced people to enter into conventional relationships against their true desires, so marriage has been the norm. However, increasingly in society, people raise the question about why this is, now that contraception means there is no need to fear unwanted pregnancies or disease in the same way. The legalist approach of natural law also forbids polyamorous relationships. The primary precepts lead us to know that the purpose of sex is reproduction, that God has created marriage to enable this to happen, and that what God joins together no one must separate. However, Fletcher rejected legalistic approaches when it comes to sex. What is most important is that the law protects the vulnerable, meaning the underage and those who might be victims of abuse. The law must also ensure that society is not harmed or disturbed by public acts that might not be loving to others. However, sexual acts are private matters other than this. Therefore, if a group of people who know what they consent to and treat each other with dignity choose to enter into an honest relationship of any kind, provided it allows for or promotes agape, Fletcher does not see that it is the business of the law to judge. Fletcher was clear that we must not fall into the trap of absolutizing the relative. He means that we cannot make a general judgment about polyamorous relationships being good or bad, right or wrong. We can only look at the individual situation and judge it relative to how much love is produced. It is important to remember that the boss principle of agape is not the same as the love we show to a family member, a friend, or a lover. Lust or the emotional love we feel for someone are quite different from the rational, compassionate treatment of other people. Agape may be demonstrated through a polyamorous relationship, but it may not be. If there are three people who love each other deeply, which is philios or eros, and as a result put the other members of the relationship before their own happiness, showing them kindness, respect, and looking out for their needs, then agape may be there. Such a relationship will be self-serving to some degree, as we choose to be with another person because they make us happy. However, agape requires that if they wish to leave the relationship, then we let them go, because their well-being is paramount to us. Since it is very much dependent upon the individual relationship, it is appropriate to look at an individual example. Mary, Mario and Matt are communicative and discuss their relationship together. They each have an equal status in the relationship, and they are committed to each other only within their group of three. They have a sexual relationship and regularly check with each other to ensure that no one feels left out or vulnerable. Each of them is aware of the needs of the other two partners and do all they can to provide for each other. Fletcher would argue that it is not the business of the law to interfere in this relationship. If they do not think it is wrong, it does not involve a minor, and they are not compromising public decency, and no one is getting hurt, then they're doing nothing wrong. Fletcher felt that it was doubtful that love's cause is helped by any of the sex laws that try to dictate sexual practices for consenting adults. On the other hand, Peter is married to Philippa and has a girlfriend, Petra. They all know about each other, but Philippa is unhappy. She does not want to be in a throuple. When she tries to express her worries to Peter, he tells her she's being unreasonable or imagining problems. Philippa has thought about leaving, but is worried about how she'll manage on her own. Petra feels left out because Peter lives with Philippa and only visits her a few times a week. In this instance, whilst happiness alone is not the primary goal for situation ethics, the unhappiness experienced by Petra and Philippa are signs that agape is not being served. An agapeic relationship would have Peter listening to the women's concerns and discussing them openly with them. Philippa is not in a position to fully consent to what is happening, and there is deception and gaslighting for the benefit of only one person. Here, situation ethics would have concern for the people in the relationship rather than any laws or rules that forbade the act of polyamory itself. Fletcher said that monogamy may be an ideal, but it is not an idol. He meant that a marital relationship is not to be pursued to the detriment of the individual people involved. In this case, it is not the seeking of monogamy that would make situation ethics reject the relationship. It is the situation that does not demonstrate love for the people involved. Fletcher said that Christian ethics is not interested in reluctant virgins and technical chastity. What people need to understand is that we can have sex without love and love without sex, and that if people do not believe it is wrong to have sex outside marriage, it is not, unless they hurt themselves, their partners, or others. He said that people should be able to do what they want, as long as they don't do it in the street and frighten the horses. Sex is relative as to how much agape is shown to the people involved. The principles of situation ethics show us that love is more important than any other rule for a Christian, and that the Christian should always put the person first in the situation that they are in.